So yes, in the last class we discussed about Plato and his ideas, especially his idea of a just state. Okay, so as I told you, he doesn't directly deal with this idea of natural law as we understand today. Well, that concept was first, properly, thought of by Aristotle and not Plato. Okay, so Plato is but then since it's the same kind of thinking that they both of them had, that is teleological way of thinking, okay, purposive way of thinking. So some seeds, some germs of that idea can definitely be seen in Plato's work. So however, we've seen that in the kind of society that was conceptualized by Plato in his the Republic uh, is quite problematic. Although for his time, because of the unique experiences that he must have undergone, led to him concluding that everyone has a deserved place in that hierarchy of order. Everyone should mind their own business, and not meddle into others' business. Um, so that's the kind of society he conceptualized. Okay. Some say that he's the first, communist. I mean, he is the one who took the idea, as is alleged, the idea of communism to even extremes than the way it is understood, today, in the sense that when he talks about communal wives and then communal children, so all those ideas say that okay, there is nothing personal and everything is for the collective. So this is something that you find in both Aristotle as well as Plato's work. So they barely talk about individual rights. Okay, so modern idea of natural right, as we understand, is not something that you see in their work. Their focus was more about the collective life that one lives, especially in the city states, because you want an orderly life, okay, and that's possible in the city states. So they have high regard and respect for the laws of the city states. But that doesn't mean that they respect all the laws. Of course, they had disregard for laws which went awry, which were corrupt. So this is what we had already discussed in the other class. But so at this stage, I thought, although this is not part of the syllabus itself, but I thought we could talk about this a little bit. So the kind of hierarchical society that that Plato talks about in the fourth century BC. Okay, mm, does that have any relevance with the system of caste that we have here in India? And what kind of similarities and dissimilarities that one can identify is something also I thought worth looking into. Okay, because caste system is no longer legal in our country, but historically until the adoption of the constitution it was there. And because of religion, although the same did not, the kind of hierarchical society conceptualized by Plato didn't last in Europe. Okay, obviously because of subsequent developments. Now historically we know there were some kind of trade relations with in ancient times. So that probably means that some sort of exchange of ideas had also happened, and probably because of that we see some kind of similarity between the idea of casteism as we understand and the kind of hierarchical society that Plato was talking about. So Plato talks about different class of people. Okay, not in terms of economic class. Okay, so in the sense that there is a ruling class, then there are others. Okay, traders. Then there are peasants and all that. Okay, then there's military class and all that. So he categorizes them into gold, silver, bronze, and then iron, etc., etc. Okay, in his work Republic. Okay, now the question that arises is whether it is possible for someone, suppose a child born in the gold class, okay, someone born to someone who's in the gold class, to go down in that hierarchy. Okay, so yes, according to Plato, that is possible. It's possible for one who is born in that upper ruling class, if he doesn't possess that virtue, okay, of being a philosopher ruler, it's possible for such a person to go down in that hierarchy. But what about someone climbing up that ladder? Is that possible? Although Plato says that it is possible. If, for example, someone who's born to the household of a peasant has the quality, okay, it's possible for someone like him. I wouldn't say her, because yeah, for Plato, of course, he didn't make that mm, distinction as much Aristotle did. So yes, in theory, he would say that it is possible for someone at that stage to climb up the ladder if he or she really possessed that virtue. Okay, but the what did he actually believe though? That's something to be researched on. So Karl Popper had said that although in the initial passages in the Republic he talks about the possibility of someone who is born in the lower rung of the society, if he or she possesses the virtue to climb up the ladder, in the later passages he contradicts that. So the fact that he had to acknowledge the possibility of someone being able to climb up was probably because of uh, you know the kind of deliberation discussion that happened there required that he took such position, but probably in reality he didn't believe that. Okay, so we don't know about that. These are just what others are commenting on what Plato thought, but original views can be understood if you read Plato's Republic. So anyway, how do we? What kind of similarities do we find that of caste system? Caste system again is hierarchical. Apart from the caste, so broadly the castes are, you have Brahmins, who are essentially, you can relate them with the philosopher ruling class. Okay, they have possession of the higher ideas. They have the wisdom to. No, I mean they are the philosopher class, not really the ruler class. Okay, unlike in the Plato's hierarchy of system. Then you have the ruler class, okay, the Kshatriya, and here the difference is probably that they are also the defenders. Okay, so here in Plato you see there is a separate set of defenders, military class, but here the Kshatriyas are in fact the ruling class who in fact possess the power. Okay, but then above them you have those philosopher class. I'm using the word philosopher class in the sense Plato had used. Basically priestly class in India. So, and then you had that Vaishyas, so basically those who possess, those who are like the trading class, okay, they are the one who function based on appetite, and then you have some, someone below them, who are on the lowest rung, okay, so and doing all the other, menial jobs. So yes, it's essentially that while you are alive, there's no possibility for you to climb up the ladder or go down the ladder. Okay, so I think that's essentially the distinction that's there between what Plato had conceptualized and how the caste system worked. Now, the very interesting thing is that these ideas had their origin in more or less the same time period, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later in different places, but then these ideas emerged more or less around the same time. Okay, so yes, so there must have been exchange of ideas in ancient times. So, so yes, that's Plato. So this is not part of the discussion on natural law. So today we are going to from there proceed on to Aristotle. Okay, Aristotle is a very important thinker in natural law school. Okay, in fact, he can be considered as the proper real father of natural law school. Okay, and he's also considered as the father of logic. Okay, he's also considered as father of logic. So he was a profound thinker. Okay, so one of the most important work by Aristotle is by the name Nicomachean Ethics. Okay, the book goes by the name of his son, who had probably compiled the thoughts and ideas of Aristotle. Hence the name Nicomachean Ethics. Apart from that, there are many other books that you can refer to. There are other compilations of Aristotle's work that you guys can refer to. But Nicomachean Ethics is the one in which is uh, very important for one who's interested in Aristotle's philosophy. Now, yes, just like Plato, Aristotle had this same way of, thinking. They are all teleological thinkers. They believed in a higher order, natural order, which is out there, which is eternal. Okay, mm, and it is just like that. Okay, so what would be the right thing to do to be, you know, in conformity with that, eternal order? So just law would be the laws which are in conformity with those eternal ideas. Okay. Just like Plato, he also glorified, the laws of the police because they cared more about order than chaos. Okay, so they believed it was their belief that, if you disobeyed the eternal laws of the city state, the police, okay, then chaos will ensue. Okay, so everyone has to follow the laws of the police. Okay, so they glorify it to such an extent that, even when the laws, of the police, according to the modern standards of, human rights, would be considered as, discriminatory, unequal. Okay, they even thought that those were nonetheless, very important laws, cannot be uh, deviated from. So that was their, love for the laws of the police. But that goes for the eternal laws of the police. Okay. Mm. So yes, apart from that, okay, uh, he also subscribed to the same idea that, it's the collective that matters more, because you need order in the collective. Okay, so they were more of a duty oriented thinker than rights oriented thinker. So idea of natural rights, you don't see that yet in their philosophy. Okay, so yes, but unlike, Plato, okay, unlike Plato, where he disagreed with Plato is, that Plato thought that, rulers should be philosophers. Okay, that was the problem with, Plato's philosophy, wasn't it? That, he thought that rulers should be philosophers. Okay, so they are the philosopher guardians who oversee, who rule the, city states. Okay, but that's where Plato disagreed. Sorry, Aristotle disagreed with Plato. Okay, so he believed that as long as there is rule of law, see, modern idea of rule of law can also be traced back to the work of Aristotle. Okay, so he wanted rule of law. Okay, not rule of whims and fancies. Okay, so when it comes to philosopher guardians, there is no way for us to ensure that it was not based on whims and fancies. Okay, which masquerade as, ideas of philosopher, as philosophy of the philosopher guardian. Okay, so that is something that was very important for them. That, okay, so the city state should be ruled by law, not arbitrary dictates, even of the philosopher guardian. So that's where he disagrees with, Plato. So this idea of rule of law, as we understand, okay, which is not arbitrary but in accordance with law, which is not based on dictates of, any ruler, but something which is already there. Okay, was for the first time conceptualized by Aristotle. Although the idea of rule of law has evolved to a great extent, as of now. So yes, that is how he is different from, Plato. So what kind of, political system does he, believe in? So he believed, if you have read, believed in power shared between, among monarchical, aristocratic and popular elements. So to relate it with the English system as it existed, okay, you can see that the monarchical element, there would be the queen, aristocratic would be the upper house, the House of Lords, and then the lower, then you have the lower house. So a similar system existed then as well. Okay. So not maybe during this period, but subsequently during Roman period, you definitely see something like this. Okay, so you have someone who's the ruler. Okay, so monarch, who's the king, whatever, and then you had that aristocratic class, and then you have the plebeian class. Okay, popular elements. Okay, So these three elements, so it's kind of, you see, kind of separation of, division of power, that is not of the kind that was conceptualized by, of course, John Locke, but he thought that there has to be a balance between all these three. Okay. Because the moment power goes into the hands of one, then of course there are chances of corruption. So yes, that's his position. So another thing is that Plato completely hated the democratic idea. Okay, but unlike him, he thought, Aristotle thought that there should be a balance between all these three different elements. Okay, because he actually thought that um, the truth is not the preserve of any one class. Okay, truth is not preserve of any one class. Okay, it could come from anywhere. Okay, so that's why he thought that it should be a balance of all these uh, you know three different elements. Okay, so so far, are you guys with me? Am I clear? Am I clear to you guys so far? Okay. Okay, so Aristotle, you guys should definitely read, not just here. This is just introductory. There are many other readings available online, and you don't need any special access to get those materials. So feel free to go and read him. Very interesting thinker of that time. Not just on nature law, his entire work on logic is also very interesting. So anyway, then okay, so he further says that there are two kinds of knowledge which are involved in search for principles of right conduct. So when you try and search the principles for right conduct, there are two kinds of knowledge which are there. Okay, one that is invariable, that does not change here or there. Okay, it's basically factual, and facts do not change. Okay, thus comes this idea of logic. If you remember, you know, one either exists or doesn't exist. Okay, so those logical ideas emerge from such thoughts. Okay, so yes, the first kind of knowledge that he talks about is invariable. Those are quite factual. Okay, description. So descriptive facts cannot vary. Uh, and then there are another kind of knowledge that is variable. Okay, that is variable in the sense that it varies from societies to societies. Okay, so the specific rules that govern a particular community, okay, might vary from society to society for different reasons. Okay, certain things might be acceptable in some societies, certain things might not be acceptable in different societies. So many external factors might play a part in why they turn out to be what they are. Okay, so this kind of knowledge Aristotle calls as calculated. Okay, in the sense that it involves one weighing up the different choices of action. So this is where you have choice, but in the other you do not have choice. Okay, so this is another very important piece of development that had happened in his work, but ultimately culminated in Immanuel Kant's pure and practical reason. Okay, pure reason that involves things that you can ideas that you can conceptualize without experience. Okay, so his book Critique of Pure Reason. And then you have practical reasons, things that practically matter. Okay, so I'm not going into all that. If we have time, we can take Immanuel Kant later on, and then we can discuss that later on. So yes, he talks about these two different kinds of knowledge which play a part in determining what is just cause. Okay, now he uses all this. Okay, he uses all this and lays down different kinds of virtues in his book. Okay, in Nicomachean Ethics, he essentially identifies many different kinds of ethical way of behaving. So essentially lays down, he believes in a kind of moderation. So and then takes the path between. Okay, so you, for more detail, you guys go and study that. I'm concerned more about the other aspect of his work, so I will skip to that. And then subsequently, there are 5 modes of thinking which are discussed. Okay, what are those 5 modes of thinking? You have episteme, you have nous, you have techne, you have phronesis, and then you have something called sophia or wisdom. Okay, so what is episteme? Uh, its episteme essentially deals with knowledge. Okay, knowledge. Okay, so what is that? So knowledge in the sense that episteme will reveal the factual world to you. Okay, so that's what episteme is essentially all about. Then you have nous. Okay, nous is not nothing but intuitive knowledge. Okay, it doesn't depend on the facts. Okay, it's something that you can intuitively perceive. Okay, so for example, we all perceive time. Okay, we all perceive time, but we know that time flows unidirectionally, that you cannot go back in time. Okay, we are all able to perceive, but if I'm to ask you to describe it, okay, um, it's difficult to describe how you perceive time, but you do perceive something called time. Okay, so for these are intuitive knowledge according to Aristotle. Okay, apart from that, he says that if you add 2 plus 2 is 4, any sort of mathematical calculations that you can do, does it depend on any experience? He would say that no, it doesn't depend on any experience. Okay, we would know intuitively that 2 plus 2 is 4. Now this is a very serious question that I'm not going deep into. Okay, so any other time we can have discussion. So from this, other questions arise, like whether mathematics is discovered or invented. Okay, so all those discussions, philosophical discussions, are there. I'm skipping all those, but if you guys are interested, I'm just laying it out before you, so that you guys can go back and study, find out for yourself. It always enlarges your understanding of the world. So apart from that, he says that logical, deductions, okay, something that he, refines, develops and refines. He says that even that is intuitive, okay. You and then there's another kind of, mode of thinking, that is art or skill, also known as technique. Okay, so these are basically the difference between science and technology as we understand. Okay, so technique is basically applying the knowledge, okay, of the world in creating something. Okay, so that's essentially the third mode of thinking. Then he identifies phronesis. Okay, phronesis basically prudence, your practical wisdom. Okay, this is only possible with experience. Okay, now this helps in you being able to predict the outcomes of your actions, so you are able to foresee what will be the consequences of a particular action taken here now. Okay, so that's phronesis. And then the fifth one is wisdom or sophia. Now wisdom and sophia are not in the sense practical. Okay, in the sense that it will not depend on experience. Okay, it is again intuitive in nature. Okay, and what do you get through through wisdom or sophia? You come to know about certain first principles. Okay, so this is the most important element. Your wisdom will help you in understanding and finding out the first principles of the world. Okay, so this is one of the most important mode of thinking that gives you access to some kind of higher knowledge. Okay, now he says that the difference between phronesis and wisdom is that someone might be prudent but not necessarily full of wisdom, whereas someone might have wisdom but not necessarily prudence. Okay, so yes, these are the 5 modes of thinking. Okay, so this is something which are very important part of Aristotle's work. See, so all those moral principles that you can think of, that it is. I'm not giving you scientific examples. Okay, so what would be a first principle? That it is not right to kill someone. Okay, just a simple example. Okay, it is not right for one to kill someone. Now, where do you derive this principle from? This is a first principle. You ought not to kill someone. Okay, where do you derive it from? According to them, they will say that this is based on some kind of you know idea that you have access to. It's intuitive. You do not need any practical demonstration to prove that it is wrong to kill. What the idea? But I disagree on this idea with them, in the sense that I think this is although we might have this tendency naturally, okay, because of evolution and all that, to not probably kill and all that. But I cannot say the same thing for everyone, because there are many psychopathic people. A certain part of their brain do not function, so they are not able to empathize. So for them, if you ask that, do you think this is a first principle, they might disagree. Okay, but if you were to ask most of the people, they will say that yes, it is wrong to kill. Okay, we ought not to kill. So if that were the case, okay, where did we come to know of it from? I mean, I just gave you a simple example. There could be many other wisdoms, okay, higher wisdom that one can identify. Now the thing is that where do we? Yes, can I complete this? Hold it. Can I complete this? So the thing is, uh, where do we get it from? Do we come to know of the fact that not fact of this wisdom that I'm referring to, that it is wrong to kill? From experience, one might say so. One might say so. Okay, in the sense that because you see the act of killing completely destroys a life, and you may even see that a society in which killing is very common is a society that is not possible. So it might even be an outcome of phronesis rather than wisdom. Okay, but then one may say that one may even say that okay, some people might, even in the absence of experience of people being killed, might come to that conclusion. Then what about that? Are they intuiting? Well, I will not still buy this idea of idea as being said by discussed by Aristotle. I will say that maybe there is a high likelihood that we are evolved to empathize with the sufferings and pains of others. So that's why we say that it is wrong to kill. Rather, so if you are using the term intuition in that sense, then fine. But if you're saying that there are certain higher principles we have access to based on this idea of wisdom, then I don't subscribe to that. But this is what Aristotle says. Yes, Swaswata. Yes. Hmm. 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 Yeah, if you have heard me, I addressed this question just now. Okay. Uh, am I audible clearly to you, Swaswata? Yes. Okay. So this is what I said. Okay, that there are both the components. Okay, there are both the components. Okay, some who might intuitively say that it is wrong to kill. Okay, others might say that okay, killing. Okay, if killing is allowed, then it will have certain dangerous consequences. Okay, dangerous consequences. So the moment I refer to consequences, I'm not saying that killing is wrong because of some first principle that I have access to. I'm saying that killing is wrong because it will lead to certain debilitating outcome for the society. So that's one. Okay, that is also very important. That is also very important. But the second aspect is that most of us, even in the absence of having experienced killing, okay, if when we see, okay, for example, when we are shown a video of someone being killed, okay, we react in a certain way, in a disapproving way. We do not accept it. We think it's wrong to kill. So then you might be again compelled to think that where do we get that from? Okay, where does that come from? So one might then say that maybe we all human beings, okay, except for the psychopaths, okay, share in the have a share in that knowledge. Okay, so one might say so. But what I was essentially saying there was that this could as much be scientifically explained, in the sense that it need not be experience of me personally, but it could be experience of me as a species of, as an as a species, okay, over a long period of time. It has been historically experienced by, my predecessors, and like in their different forms, okay, not just in human forms, but as they evolved, they must have, somehow intuitively learned that killing is not okay, in the sense that the outcome of it is probably not okay. So that's how we develop this idea of empathy, okay, because it is necessary for people to coexist, and in a society in which it is okay to kill, I mean, if it is acceptable to kill, such a society is not possible. But then you also raise the question of psychopaths. Yes, for them the problem is that they do not have their and they do not have a portion of the brain that generates empathy, okay. So because of that, they are not able to intuit it the way you and I do. So yes, that's how I understood in this whole thing. But then if you think of Aristotle, he came up with these ideas almost 2005 years 500 years ago. Now back in those times, you did not have all these modern sciences, in the way, we have now. So of course, he, in the essence of all that, he was able to think of all these different ideas. So that's something worth appreciating. So any questions, Swaswata? Was I able to address? Huh? If you have any other confusion, you can raise. Other students, did you understand what he was talking about? Now this, wisdom is very essential. Okay, wisdom is very essential because this gives you access to those certain higher principles. Okay, so that is a very important thing. So prudence might give you practical, knowledge about, it might tell you that, it might, make you a good strategist. Okay, it might make you a good strategist, but it doesn't make you a, good person, in the sense that a, person with wisdom might possess. Okay, so for example, a politician might be a good strategist. Okay, good strategist might be able to foresee the consequences of, their actions. Certain others obviously not, because they end up making mess. Okay, but then the politician does not necessarily have wisdom, so you need that as well. Okay, so anyway, silly examples. So we don't have much time, so I'll just jump to the next portion. Okay, so then after that, Aristotle talks about two different kinds of justice. Okay, he talks about two different kinds of justice. One is universal justice, okay, and the other one is particular justice. Now you will know the relevance of wisdom here. Okay, wisdom traces what? The first principles. Okay, the first principles. First principles do not change. Okay, so you go to science then. Okay, so for example, laws of thermodynamics, laws of gravity, laws of motion, you may have different explanation today. For example, how Newton might have explained motion might be completely different from how it was subsequently explained by, for example, Einstein and others. Okay, but then the experience of it, okay, remains the same. Those are not variable, they remain the same. Okay, so just like that, okay, universal justice will be applicable of application of those first principles. I'm not referring to the laws of science. Okay, just like the laws of science, they're saying that there are certain first principles, okay, which if applied to specific cases, okay, what it leads to is universal justice, because these are universal principles, they do not change, and they lead to universal justice. Okay, but then the hypocrisy of it. Even though Plato was talking about universal justice, okay, but he was quite happy with slavery. So where did that universality of your ideas go? Why did he make distinction between men and women? Okay, so that's the hypocrisy of the ideas that he was conceptualizing. But then what it essentially tells us is that even though we are able to conceptualize universal ideas, but when it comes to actually applying them in our lives, it is very difficult, because we are slaves of our experiences. But then the more we know about how vulnerable we are to our experiences, the more the closer it takes us to reaching the truth. So that is very essential. So see, when we talk about natural law school, we talk essentially about philosophy, then the law as we understand today. But this is very essential in the sense that tomorrow when you become a lawyer, okay, before you become a lawyer, you also need to become a good human being. So that is very essential. So I think with that I will end today's discussion. Tomorrow we'll discuss about rest of Aristotle's ideas.